Hello and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. If you're returning, thank you as always for being here. You are amazing and I absolutely adore you. All right, I have some brand new fall DIYs, so let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting. DIY number one. All right, I have these little ceramic leaves from the Dollar Tree, and then I have these sheets of wood. I guess they're balsa wood that I'd gotten from Amazon. I'm going to be layering three of them together. I don't know if you could tell, they were pretty flimsy, is I guess a good term for it. They're just relatively thin, right? So they are very bendable, and I thought that because I was using those ceramic leaves, which are relatively heavy, it might hold up better if I made this sign a little bit stronger. So that's what I am doing at the moment. I have an issue with my nozzle on my wood glue, so I am clearly using a popsicle stick, but I'm just getting it spread out. I wanted to make sure I had enough glue around the edges, especially to just get this nice and secure. I'm getting everything lined up, pressing it down, and then I'm going to do the same thing one more time. So I've got three layers for this particular project. Now you don't have to do that, but I opted to do it. And then I'm just going to weigh it down with some of my heavier paints and my glue, just to make sure that it doesn't kind of pull away from itself as it's drying. So I'm now going to paint my leaves, and I was trying to decide what shade of green, but I've got my pumpkin there, and then I have vintage mustard, and I believe that one is called fern. It's either fern or moss, and for the life of me I can't remember what it's called, but it's a Waverly chalk paint. And going to give each of these one good coat of paint. Again, this is the vintage mustard by Home Decor. And then this is Pumpkin by Waverly, I believe. And then the other one is also a Waverly color. I want to say it's moss. I'm like 95% sure that it's moss, that green color. But again, just giving them each a good coat, making sure that I'm getting the bottom as well. I did leave the little lip edge of the bottom cleared or yeah, clear of paint, I should say, just to hopefully help with adhesion later. So now I wanted to stain my wooden sign that I'd put together, but I didn't want to use the antique wax because I was afraid that because it's wax, it would prevent the hot glue that I'm going to use later from adhering as well. So I pulled out my Java chalk paint, and the last time I used this, it was really dark. I thought maybe I had added black paint to it, and maybe I had done something along the lines of creating a different shade of stain because I was kind of at the dregs of it. But then I realized that there was a bunch of paint kind of glopped in the bottom. So I grabbed a not a paint stick, a popsicle stick, and I was trying to kind of smoosh it around and realized there was a lot of paint in there, but it had started to dry out, and so it was just kind of glommed on there. So I worked with it for quite a little bit with a little bit of extra water and got it back to its original color, so I was happy about that. And now I am using a baby wipe to go ahead and apply the paint to the sign. Just a really thin layer, and I did go back over it with a clean part of my baby wipe just to remove any excess paint. Got it to the shade that I was looking for, and once everything was sufficiently dry, I'm going to go ahead and try and get everything lined up here. I was just making sure that there was no wet orange paint on the bottom of that, because I am planning on having to move these around a little bit here and there, and I do end up shifting them a little bit. So now I have my Waverly wax, and I'm going to use a chip brush and just kind of follow the texture of the leaves. I don't know if you can see it on camera here, but they actually do have little, I'm calling them leaves, feathers, sorry, feather, they have that feather texture Sorry. So I'm just following that texture of the feathers. And yeah, so a picture says 1,000 words, right? Now I have this little word fall that I clearly had cut the top half off of it. I think it must have been like welcome or hello or something, but I used it for another project and I had held on to the fall piece in case I was able to work it into another project, and I decided to use it for this. So I'd been debating whether or not to keep it all connected across the top. And then I opted to cut it apart. Clearly, my scissors are strong enough for this. I was just trying to be careful because I didn't want to end up cutting another part of the letters that I didn't want cut. Because, you know, you kind of cut through something hard like that and your scissors automatically want to kind of close all the way. So I was just being extra careful of how I was trimming these down and getting that extra piece removed. So once I had all of my little letters cut out, I grabbed a piece of sandpaper and I just made sure I went over all of the rough edges, got everything nice and smoothed out. And I wasn't too worried about the fact that some of the edges were brown and then some of them were the natural color from where I'd cut them, because I am going to paint this in just a moment. I'm going to be using the Java chalk paint that I had just revived, so to speak, and going to give each of the letters just one good coat of paint. I was trying not to get it all over myself. But once I had that done, I was ready to get them all lined up. I gave them a little help with drying first, but I've got my ruler on there to try to help me keep them all in a straight line and also spacing wise. So once I had them lined up where I wanted them, it was time to go ahead and adhere them. I was just paying attention to where along that ruler edge I had them placed, and I set them right back down in that same place from which I had picked them up. Just a teeny little bit of hot glue on these. I didn't want it smooshing out. These letters are pretty small, so I was kind of running the tip of the hot glue gun along the actual surface of the letters to try to kind of smear the glue on there. I did have a few little bits that had scooshed out, and so I'm just using my weeding tool to help remove the little teeny globs of glue. And now I am going to put a very generous amount of glue on the tops and bottoms of these. They are, again, relatively heavy, so I want to make sure that they are going to be nicely anchored. So I put it kind of in that well that was created by the ceramics, but then also up onto that lip a little bit. So I know it's probably a little hard to tell what I'm doing there, but I definitely had it on the outside as well. But my goal is to make sure these don't end up falling off while it's hanging on the wall, because if they fall off, they will break. They are ceramic. And plus, I don't want my piece falling apart. So I probably should have also used some E6000 or something of that nature. If you want to make sure you have that extra strong hold, highly recommend that you not rely just on the hot glue. All right, now I am grabbing my ribbon. I was starting to think about a hanger, but then I felt like this was still just a little too plain. And I thought, you know what, maybe I can trim it out top and bottom with this ribbon first and then create a hanger. So that is what I did. And I knew that the full length or full width of the ribbon wasn't going to fit on the picture with the way that I've got everything arranged. So my thought is to wrap it and then fold it over the top edge and do the same thing on the bottom edge. So to do that, I'm going to need to make sure that I've got everything nice and tight. I first made sure that my my feathers were sufficiently cool to be able to flip it over and not have them slide or fall off. I'm going to anchor down one side of the ribbon. I'm going to hold it with my cold metal scissors, which actually helped it cool a lot faster. And then I'm going to be pulling it taut and wrapping it again. I'm going to check and make sure that it's still nice and straight and even. And then I will flip it back over and secure it with hot glue on that other side. I'm just going to hold it nice and tight. A little bit of hot glue and get that secured. With this ribbon, the glue does come right through it, so I'm just making sure I'm being very careful not to burn myself. And then I'm going to kind of fold this over like you would a package. So I kind of pushed the middle of it inward and then folded it over using more hot glue. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And once I had that all secured and good to go, I ran a bead of glue down the middle part and just made sure that that was all nice and secure. I wasn't sure if I was going to need hot glue on the front side, but ultimately I ended up just tacking it down here and there. But first I did the same thing with the bottom. So there you go. I'm just putting little tiny bits of glue because again, the glue will come through and it will show on my piece. So I'm trying to be careful with the amount of glue that I'm using there. Just a teeny little bit. So now I've got a length of ribbon that I'm going to use to make my hanger. I am not pleased with the way that I did the hanger. I should have been thinking a little bit more about how it was going to look while it was actually hanging, because this piece of ribbon is perhaps for where I'm placing it on the back of the piece a little bit too short. What I really should have done was just create a loop and centered it at the back. Or at least placed the ends a little bit closer together. Or I should have used something that wasn't quite so wide. So what I ultimately ended up doing, and sorry if you can hear Sammy shaking around in the background, he's hanging out with me here. But what I ultimately ended up doing was just kind of twisting it around on itself. And you'll see it in a moment here when I show you the final project, but it still looks super cute. But let me know what you think. DIY number 2. All right, this is also from the Dollar Tree, and this is a transfer from Chalk Couture. And I am going to be getting this out and prepping it first with my little microfiber and terry cloth fuzzer. I think that's what it's called. But essentially, these transfers are super sticky when you first start to use them. You can see it's sticking really well to that microfiber fuzzy piece. So in order for it not to overly stick to your surface when you use it, you just want to get it a little bit fuzzed up. So just going to lift it and set it down a few times here. Did one last time on the terry cloth side for good measure, and I was ready to go ahead and get it lined up on my piece. I am able to kind of see where my edges are through the transfer. There was sufficient light that I could see it kind of as a shadow. So I'm just trying to make sure I've got it all lined up, trying to think about what I'm going to be doing at the top of it in a little bit to keep that in mind when I determine where I want it placed top to bottom. So now I have my pesto paste and my shimmer copper paste. That was a baby wipe that I have off on the side there just to help myself with cleanup in a moment. And I've got my little squeegee. I'm going to use the pesto all over the top part of the sign. So all of the basic font words, the non-script words. I'm sure that there is a term for what that type of font is, and it's not coming to mind for me right now. And then I'm just going to make sure that I work relatively quickly with it because it will dry very fast. So I'm going to lift this up. It's looking awesome because if I leave it down too long, it will dry within the transfer. And when I lift the transfer up, and I know this from experience, it'll just pull all the paste up with it. So I did not want that to happen here. Now I'm using that shimmer copper over the script word. Beautiful. And once I do that, I'm going to lift it and check my lettering again. And you're going to actually see it was a good thing that I didn't lift it all the way off, because I started to do that and then I noticed that the F it had some kind of gaps in the color. So I went ahead and put it back down and was able to fix that without any issue. All right, so now I have some florals. These leaves are from the Dollar Tree, and then the flowers themselves are from the Hobby Lobby. I had gotten that on a very deep 90% discount, so I was super happy, and I'm just going to be using a portion of it. So for right now, I'm going to trim down my little leaf stems so that they're not completely extended or overlapping each other. I'm adding a little teeny bit of hot glue there because I cut that leaf stem down kind of halfway in the middle of that actual piece of the pick. And I don't want those leaves falling off the stem. So I used just a tad bit of hot glue on that. Just gonna trim these down and get them to the length that I want as I figure out where I want to place them on the piece. And then I am going to do pretty much the same thing with the flower pick. This is obviously way too long for the piece, so I'm going to trim it off where I think it needs to be trimmed. I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue to keep it together because I actually do like the way that it is all held together. Sammy is here and talking with us. He wants to go and play. I don't say the word out loud because he knows what it means, but I guess I'm going to have to break here and just at least let him out. So bear with me for just a second. Okay. He loves to chase the squirrels. So at any rate, I apologize for that interruption. We are back to putting all of the little picks together, identifying exactly where I want them. And once I have them lined up, I'll go ahead and start applying some hot glue to make sure that they are nice and secured. I am looking at that one pick of flowers on the right because I can see that the end is just a little bit too long still, but I opted to wait until I had it secured before I trimmed it off. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of smush that glue around. I'm using some of the scrap ends there to do that. And once I had it nice and secure, I went ahead and added some additional hot glue in strategic places. So making sure that I'm catching any of the ends of those leaves, and also just making sure that everything is as symmetrical as possible because I tend to like the symmetry, and making sure that everything is just where I wanted it. Now, one thing that I didn't realize, and then I went ahead and once it was cool, I trimmed that off. One thing I didn't realize, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, is that I was going to need to add a little bit more foliage at the top there in the middle, but I'll get to that shortly. So I'm using the same ribbon that I used in the last project, and I'm going to create a bow with 2 loops on either side. I just wanted something that was relatively simple, and going to kind of cross them over each other. I'll be pinching them in the middle and then wrapping another piece of ribbon around it to secure it, tying the ribbon around it, I should say. So that extra length of ribbon, I would guess, was probably 14 to 16 inches long. I'm going to go ahead and tie it off in the middle. These loops are probably 3-inch loops on either side, but as you've probably heard me say, I am very visual. I kind of do things based on how they look. I don't measure a whole heck of a lot unless I absolutely have to. Then I sometimes run into trouble. So here is where I couldn't tell from my angle. You can see it kind of here on camera that you can see stuff up at the top just above the bow, right? From my position, I couldn't tell that there was icky showing there. So I didn't show it on camera, but afterwards when I went to hang it up and looked at it and I realized, I just added in 2 more leaves and another little flower at the top there to camouflage that. So I've just got my dovetailed ends and that's it. Let me know what you think. And now it's time for a shout out timeout. Sweet Tammy Lee, all of this wonderful patriotic decor. I love it. And great Kathy. Kathy has been busy with her houses and other decor. Beautiful. I would love to give you a shout out as well. If you have interest, just send me an email at craftedbycorie@gmail.com. DIY number 3. All right, so I have these pieces from the Dollar Tree. All 3 are glass. I have a bowl. I have I think that's a votive or tea light holder. The little one to my left there. And then pretty much off camera, that was like a bud vase. But just getting the bottom of this bowl cleaned up and removing the residue from that sticker. And now I'm taking my mineral chalk paint by Waverly and going to give one good coat of paint to this votive holder. I think it's a votive holder. I guess you could use it as a little vase if you wanted to, but I think it's technically a candle holder. So making sure that I'm getting all of those little divots filled in. And you could paint the insides of these if you opted to. It just depends on what kind of a look you're going for. I personally decided for this project I wanted the matte finish. This is my salmon coral chalk paint. I'm going to do the same thing on the glass bowl. One good coat of paint. With this one, I was trying to make sure I got in all the little nooks and crannies while at the same time not getting too much paint in there that would pool and get gloppy. So it was kind of a little bit of a balance, if I'm honest. And then setting this down on top of one of my paint containers, which actually was very convenient and allowed me to spin this piece and do with it what I needed. But as I was saying, you could paint the insides of these as opposed to the outsides, and you would still get that color, but you would have a glossy exterior, right? So it just, again, depends on what you are looking for your final piece. This is the vintage mustard again. I'm just applying some dots. I wasn't sure how large I wanted them, or if I wanted them all to be uniform, or if I wanted them different sizes. Ultimately, I did make them a bunch of different sizes. I was trying to place them randomly around. And again, I apologize for Sammy's chain. He is trying to PLAY, and I'm kind of not doing what he wants at the moment. But at any rate, you can see essentially what I am doing here with the vintage mustard. And I just continued until I had a good number of them and was happy with the way that it was looking. So once that was done and they were sufficiently dry, I went ahead and started putting it together. Now that third piece, that's all I'm doing is using it to lift this a little bit higher than it would be if it were to sit directly on the candle holder. I did decide to drop a little fake candle in there, thinking that it might help it glow a little bit. Let me know what you think. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the projects, please remember to give me a big thumbs up, leave me a comment, let me know which one was your favorite. And until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Take good care. Bye.